Hey everyone, Sycra here, and in this video I'm doing a self-portrait traditionally using a mirror. So I have a mirror right in front of me as I'm drawing this, and I am using a Prismacolor Premier colored pencil, and I like them a lot. And the paper I'm using, it's just paper I found lying around, but I think it's watercolor paper because it has quite a tooth to it. Yeah, so the reason I'm doing a self-portrait is because, actually it's because of Flavia, because she's doing self-portraits right now. And I remembered that when I was learning how to draw, well, it's when I was still self-taught, I did a lot of self-portraits. I saw some artists were doing self-portraits and they were saying how good it is. So I figured, okay, I guess I'll try that. So what I did was, for 30 days, I did a self-portrait every day. And I feel like I improved quite a lot in my understanding of how to draw the face. And how to draw from life, because drawing from a mirror, it's not that easy, especially when you are drawing yourself, because you look down at the page and then you look up again at the mirror, and it's kind of like you might lose your position. So I thought, well, this is going to be good practice, and it really was. The other thing it does is you're forced to look at yourself, which, I don't know, for different people this might be a different experience, but for me, I've never really been comfortable with the way I look. I don't really like the way I look. I mean, I don't think I'm the ugliest person in the world, but I definitely don't think I look that great. And this is something that forces you to really observe yourself, and it can be kind of hard, but in the end I think it's helpful. But I don't know, it's it's still really hard even as I watch this. So I just want to talk a bit about what I'm doing. So you'll notice that up until this point I've been holding my pencil. I mean, I'm still holding my pencil sort of in a strange way. I don't know how to describe it. It's easier to just look at the image and see, how I'm holding it, but it's sort of pinched at the tip, and I started out by using the side of the, I don't know if you'd call it lead, but the side of the, I don't know, let's just call it lead. It's not lead, but let's call it lead. The side of the lead, and that lets me get very soft, broad strokes. So although this is using a pencil or a colored pencil, it feels more like painting. Like, I feel more like I'm painting with a pencil than necessarily drawing. Because this is how I sort of approach it if I was using a brush. See, I'm using a lot of the side of the pencil, and I'm making sure that I use a very light pressure, and I can slowly build up these forms. You'll also notice that I'm drawing quite slowly. Well, I don't know if it shows. This is in real time, by the way. I kept it in real time because I wanted to stress how slowly I'm putting these in. And the reason is that I am really paying attention to what I'm seeing in the mirror. So I'm not just, putting it down quickly and then spending the rest of the time correcting mistakes. And this is something I learned quite a while back. One of my teachers, Rue, he told me that when you draw or paint, every stage of the drawing or the painting should look good. Like, if someone was to stop you at any point and look at it, it shouldn't look like a mess. I have sort of a mixed view on this. I think that's nice. It's a nice thought, but I also think sometimes maybe it might look bad in an early stage, and it's sort of like a chef. You don't judge the food based on how it looks when it's not cooked or whatever. But I also agree to an extent, because it does make you think a lot more. If every stage has to look good, you're more likely going to put more effort and care into each stage. And I don't know. For myself, I feel like I prefer it, most of the stuff I do, in its early stage when it's more rough. And so here, what I'm doing is I'm really, really paying a special attention to the eyes. And what I'm really looking at when I draw the iris and the pupil is I'm actually not drawing the iris and the pupil. What I'm doing is I'm drawing the negative space around those shapes, if that makes sense. I mean, sure, I'm filling it in, but when I look at it, I'm actually drawing the whites of the eyes, and that seems to help me a lot more in terms of getting the shape just right. It's like if you draw the negative space that is formed by the whites of the eyes, you tend to get the iris and the pupil and stuff more accurate than if you actually try and draw the pupil. I'm not sure exactly how that works, except to suggest that maybe it's because we already have sort of a symbol for the pupil, you know, when you draw the circle and then you put the dot in, and maybe that's what our brain is falling back to. It's just thinking of a symbol and then not really what the shape really is. So here, you know, I'm continuing to build up forms and using a very light touch, building up my values. I don't think this is like the perfect instruction of how to do it, because I haven't done a self-portrait in many years now, I think. Although I used to do them all the time, and I also haven't drawn with a Prismacolor in a while, but it's really nice if you... Prismacolor Premiers are like great. Prismacolor Color Erase pencils are great too. But I found there's quite a bit of a difference in terms of the colors. Like some colors behave better than others, so it's something where you will have to experiment and see which colors work best for you. And it also depends on the paper you use, but I think they're very, very good pencils. So going back to the benefits of drawing self-portraits, I think one of the biggest things that it did for me is it helped me understand form. And the way I did that is I drew myself in the mirror and I drew my nose. And then I turned my head slightly to the right or the left, I don't remember exactly which one, and then I drew it again, drew my nose again, and then turned it a bit more, and drew it again, turned it a bit more, and drew it again. And by the end of it, I started to see how the form turns, and in my head something clicked, and I could now see this shape in 3 dimensions. And I think that's super important. I mean, you don't have to do it this way, this particular way. However you can get your brain to sort of understand form, you know, whatever method you use is up to you, but this was just the method I used, is I just kept drawing, turning my head. And the other thing that's good is drawing from life, I feel, is better than drawing from reference sometimes. Not always. I mean, there are times where drawing from life, you just don't get time to draw detail or to fully understand things. For instance, if you were drawing someone and they were dancing, you might get the gesture down, but you might not be able to capture like a certain pose where someone's in midair the way a photograph can, you know, capture that. But what you do get from drawing from life is, first of all, you're translating from 3D to 2D, which I think helps. It helps your brain create more information. You've just got more to work with than when you work from 2D to 2D. So that's one thing. And then something else is that the light and the color that you see is a lot more rich and interesting. You might notice how photos tend to either overexpose or underexpose. Well, our eyes are special types of cameras that really compensate, or our brain rather compensates for this when we look into the world. So when we see things in life and draw from life, our values and our colors are more like what a human sees. And so when you capture that and you show it to another person, it looks more correct, if it's done well anyway. That's what I feel anyway. That's why I feel like paintings, like really good paintings, they show us what we see the way we really see it, and cameras tend to show us just the way they are, but not the way a human sees it. I hope that makes sense. I don't know if that makes any sense. So that's the other thing. And then the advantage of drawing yourself is really that, one, you get to learn about yourself in great detail, maybe more detail than you would like to. You get to see all your flaws, and you get to understand exactly the angle of your ear or whatever. And the other thing is that you're a model that is reliable, I hope, kind of. Because you're not going to be, you don't have to pay for yourself, right? Like, you can just find a mirror and draw yourself, and it's pretty cheap model. And it also makes you, I think, a better model in general, because I was doing self-portraits a lot. So what would happen is when I look down and then look up, I would sometimes, my head would be in a slightly different position, and then it would be really frustrating because my drawing would get wonky. So I learned to keep my head sort of in the right position, like fixed, and to find something to look at and then just stay straight in terms of my head. I hope this is sorry for constantly saying I hope I make sense, because I'm not sure if I do. But anyway, and what happens is from doing this, I ended up understanding what a good model should be like. So unfortunately, I ended up being a model for other people in drawing sessions when the model wouldn't show up. They liked to use me because I was good at staying still, but I am not. Don't like being a model. It's really boring, but at least I could stay still. So back to the drawing itself. Again, I'm working on building up my tones, and what I'm doing as I draw this is I'm squinting my eyes, and I've talked about this in the past, but I figured there's a lot of people who are newer viewers of my channel, and they may not have seen some of the older videos where I talk more about painting and portraiture and caricature and painting techniques and stuff. So what squinting the eyes does is you are basically, your eyelashes go down and then they block some of the light that is entering your eye. And so when less light is entering your eye, what happens is it forces your pupil to open, right? To dilate. So you let more information in, and it also reduces detail. So what happens is you just see larger areas of darks and lights. And I think I made a video way back when called How Painters Use Squinting. You might want to look that up if you want more information on this. But basically that's what I'm doing. I'm squinting, not as much as I should have, especially not in the beginning, because I kind of forgot about that. Midway drawing, I was like, oh yeah, I should be squinting. And then I added more. But yeah, I squint and I look at the values and I look at the relationships, like how dark is everything compared to everything else? Are these relationships reading? And I'm not really drawing the things as they are. Like when I'm drawing the eye, I'm not necessarily really drawing an eye. I'm more just drawing a shape of shadow that I see. And it's kind of like a jigsaw puzzle. If you get one piece placed properly and then another piece placed properly, and then you just keep doing that. Individually, the pieces don't really look like much, but when you've got them all in the right place, then they form a pretty picture, or a picture. Maybe it's not pretty. Maybe it's gory and brutal, and anyway, whatever. But yeah, so that's what I'm doing. Again, I'm continuing to use the side of the lead when I shade in. I don't want to be drawing, really. Like, I guess it's still considered drawing, but I don't want to be using the tip of the pencil. And when I do, I want to put it in as I do. See, right now I switch to a writing position. And I try to do this as little as possible because I don't think it looks that good. It's sort of like, it's fine if you know when to use it, when you're just using it as a tiny brush. If you think like you're not using a pencil, but you're just using a brush, and you can use a bigger brush or a smaller brush, you only want to use your really small brush when you need to get those very small details. Like in this case, I need it to get darker, and holding your pencil more like a writing tool does allow you to get darker than if you're just holding it like a, I don't know, side stance position. So yeah, it does let me get darker, and it lets me become more precise, but I try to remember to not stay in that too long, because when I do, I tend to start drawing with lines again instead of drawing with just tone, just areas of tone. And I'm again squinting, and I'm looking for, like, what do I really see when I squint and look at myself in the mirror? Is this area in shadow? And in the shadow, I think it's fine to actually lose a lot of detail. I think it looks better actually when and this is a personal opinion, but I think it looks better where in the light, and especially in the midtone, or not the midtone, but the area, well, yeah, it's the midtone, but it's just before it turns into shadow, as the light is just turning into shadow, that area is called the terminator, or the core shadow. And that's where, just before it gets to the core shadow, that's where the most information would be seen. Because when things are too bright, they get blown out and you don't really see much information. And then as things go into shadow, it's nice to keep them sort of hazy and mysterious. Like, you don't know exactly what's going on, but it's something. There's something in the shadow I kind of see, but then in the light, it's more clear and it's defined. And I think that creates a nice contrast. So yeah, that's what I'm doing more, is like, although I put in detail, I'm also getting rid of detail. And I think I probably went further than, I would need to with this, because I figured at first, like, I was okay with it, but I thought it would make for too short of a YouTube video if I just leave it really, really rough. So I still have it pretty sketchy, but a bit more detailed. And here I'm just putting in right now I'm doing the ear, but then I'm putting in the background so that it just helps pop a little bit, especially in the light side. I want the shadow side to get a bit more fuzzy and get lost in the background, but I want the light side to have something to contrast against it, so the light part looks brighter by virtue of just contrast. So pretty much I'm nearing the end. I'd recommend, try self-portraits. I think they're really good, especially if you haven't done them. I think they're a great way to study yourself, to learn about yourself, and also to get better with art. So I hope this helped, and thanks for watching.